I'm making a change today. The liquor been taking the pain away. I heard you was giving your chain away. That's kind of like giving your fame away. What's wrong with you? I sit in a box with our own.
What's up, broskies? Fucking Devlin back with a spicy little profile. Which honestly, someone even commented about it, which I think is crazy. They're like complaining about the scare clause, which I mean, I would complain too, for real, because like this shit goes kind of crazy, especially considering leaving our last tournament. I ended up going X-1. Yeah, she went pretty crazy. The upgrades really performed. They really came through for me this time, and I'm pretty happy with the overall turnout. I do think I still want to like upgrade it a little bit more, test it out, just to make sure everything is exactly how I want it. But this is our current build for branded Predaplants. As you can see, I placed the side deck face down just because you guys already should know what I would put in here, but I mean, why don't you leave a comment down below and let me know what you think it is. All right, so kick things off. Let's go ahead and get into this main deck. I think it's 44 cards, might be wrong. Because we normally run 40, but with the recent upgrades, we've gone to 44, and I think it really just, it's kind of crazy. Ultimately, consistency was something I was worried about. We did initially have 2 other cards in it. It was a duplicate copy of 1 card and Spider Orchid, but I found myself just never using Spider Orchid, so I decided to cut it. And first 3, triple copy of Orpheus Scorpio. As you know, when it's summoned, normal or special, you just kind of send a monster from hand, special out of Predaplant. Of course, your primary target should be Darling 20th Cobra, which I'm running at 1 because, let's face it, once per dual effect. Its effect is only applicable if it's specialed out with Predaplant monster. Like, it's just not, it's not worth it otherwise. So, you know, single copy. If you draw into it, it's a dead card, which realistically I drew into this a couple times. Weirdly enough, when we went to regionals, I drew into this like every single game, which was embarrassing. But you know, since then, this is really like boosting consistency. It's fantastic. Grab Biblis, 2 copies of that. This one right here, if it's into the grave, you just add a Predaplant monster. Really, really great option to pitch from Orpheus Scorpio. Really great option to pitch in a lot of cases because it just, I mean, it triggers like anytime it's in, it's fine. And if you're, I believe it's if your opponent has, or if it's just a monster with a Preda counter is on the field, then it just can special summon itself back out. It will get managed after, but I mean, that's a risk I'm willing to take because it's really not that crazy. It's just a free body on board, free for summons, etc. Next up, Double Sundew. This is the first of what I'll describe as many amazing opportunities. Sundew is just the Predaplant equivalent to Fallen Albaz. Really is just a super poly. If you have Preda counters on your opponent's monsters, you can use them as fusion material. They're also counted as dark at the time. So 2 super polys like already here. I think that's pretty crazy. By the way, if you didn't know, Darling 20 Cobra, you can search out super poly as it just lists to add 1 polymerization spell or fusion spell from your deck. It can be anyone. You can get Red Eyes Fusion, Fusion Destiny, Instant Fusion, any of the cards that you primarily want to use for a fusion summoning. That being said, one of the next cards that I use for fusion summoning is the triple copy of Bufo that I have in deck. This one right here, fantastic card. You just use it to fuse in your Pendulum Zone, Additionally, if this card is sent to the graveyard or the extra deck as a means of fusion summoning, then you just get to add a Dark Pendulum monster from extra deck to hand. And the target for that would be the double Triantis that you keep. This card right here, another fantastic card, which allows you to use your pendulum zones as fusion material as well. So this combo, of course, as you can see, would be pretty broken. I probably talked about it already in the first video, but also when it is used as material, you'll place Predacounters on the field up to the number of monsters you control. Really easy way to go into plays using Sundew or Dragostapelia just to blank someone's board. Next up, Celestial and Dasher. Now last time you guys saw the Dark Magician. Oh yeah, it was just Dark Magician. Yeah, because Fallen Albaz was there. And we ended up going into DPE on this one. It's just a really easy summon, but we also noticed that this increases consistency. The effect of Celestial to draw 2 cards at the cost of banishing these 2 was just too great to pass up, because realistically, Predaplant's biggest issue is that they have to struggle with the resource management. Me personally, I try to think as far ahead as possible so I don't have to rely too heavily on this, but it's definitely come in clutch several times. Next up, Despia Tragedy. I'm not explaining what Despia Tragedy does. Like, I mean, realistically, if you don't know this at this point, we count on having played Despia for, I don't know, like fucking 3.5 years. Like, you should know what it is. Same thing for Ad Libitum. You know, ad libs really do go crazy in this deck, but I will say I'm considering swapping this out. It is a great card, it's fantastic, but I really don't use it as much as I probably should. But what I do use a lot of is the, I thought it was 3, it doesn't matter. The double copy of Alubra that I have, really strong opportunity with this card just to, again, add some consistency, get that branded fusion to hand if I really choose to do so, or just any of the branded cards that I choose to have in deck. Next up, Fallen Albaz, as you know, double copy, super poly. So 2 Sundew, 2 Albaz, that's 4 super poly already. Keep that in mind. Next up, something that I'm assuming everyone is not going to be too shocked by is the Bestial Sariner Magna Hut, both at 1, and then 2 Bestial Juiceworm. Now I will say, because I don't remember if we've gone over any of these in I mean, we probably haven't, but you know, target a light or dark in either graveyard, banish it, and if you do, you can special summon the card. If your opponent has monsters on the field, you can actually just use that as a quick effect, just banish, special it out real quick, like bada bing, bada boom type shit. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 bestial monster or 1 branded spell trap from the grave or from the deck, or 1 branded spell trap from deck to grave, except Bestial Sarner. Fantastic card. Next up, Bestial Magnum Hut, whatever. Same special summon effect to just bam, like banish a monster. Really easy, really fantastic for, you know, kind of clearing out some of these branded effects that are running rampant. And if this card is special summon, you can activate this effect during the end phase of the turn. You can add a dragon monster for deck to hand, except for Magnum Hut. Juiceworm, which is by far my favorite. We run 2 of them, of course. Same special summon effect. And then if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target 1 special summon monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. I think that's just fantastic. I mean, it is targeting, but it's also send, so that's a really cool effect as long as it's not like something that can't be targeted, it's a really great option. These 3 cards aren't used extensively. They are really great tech cards to add in. Good enough to where I was comfortable with them being in the main deck. Next up, after the single copy of Call by the Grave, I'm not explaining what that does, obviously. Double copy of Predapractice. As you know, special out a Predaplant monster, add 1 Predaplant to hand. I like to special out Orphis Scorpio and then add Biblisp, assuming that I have that kind of setup, of course. Pitch Biblisp, add, you already know what it is. Next up, single copy Polymerization, single copy Instant Fusion, single copy Ultra Polymerization, double copy Super Polymerization. So 2 Sundew, 2 Albaz, 2 Super Poly, 6 Super Poly. You add in that Darlingtonia Cobra, which lets you add the Super Poly. That's like having 7 Super Poly. I mean, really am just like playing like a bad bitch these days. Next up, double Fusion Destiny. As you saw, Celestial and Dasher were already there. That wasn't much of a surprise for anyone. Triple copy of Branded Fusion, and this is the same, of course, consistent with what we had last time, but here's where things kind of switch up a little bit. As you saw, the expanded Branded Despia package, it's fantastic. Next up, we have Despia Theater of the Branded, and I'll go over the Branded cards. I'm not going to go over the Despia cards. Again, Keanu's played Despia so much. If you don't know it by now, if you ain't got it by now, you just ain't getting it. Come on, let's go. Next up, we got Branded Opening, triple copy of that. You discard 1, take 1 Despia monster from the deck, either add it to hand or special summon it in defense. For the rest of the turn after this card resolves, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck except for fusion monsters, which with this deck, of course, is no problem. It also has built-in protection for your fusion monsters if they are about to get destroyed. You can just banish this card instead. It's fantastic. Single copy of Branded in red. Target a Despia monster, Fallen Albaz in grave, add it to hand, then you can apply one of the following. Fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck or hand, from your extra deck by banishing fusion material monsters mentioned on it from your hand or field. It can't attack directly this turn. And I will say, I'm not overly worried about the non-direct attack. It's really not that big of a deal. One of the best cards in the game. Branded Banishment. Target 1 Despia or 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster in your graveyard, special summon it, then apply this effect. Fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing monsters listed on it from either field. So another copy of Super Poly, realistically. 2 Sundew, 2 Fallen Albaz, 2 Super Poly, Darlingtonia Cobra, Branded Banishment. That's crazy. You got 8 Super Polys in here. That's wild. So I'll go ahead and package these up real quick, and get into the extra deck, which has changed pretty substantially. It's changed a good bit. So first up, we're going with a single copy of Dark, the Dark Charmer Gloomy. I use that especially to just kind of clear out some of the issues in Grave. Of course, there's so many dark fusions now. You can just hijack someone's monster. And something that a lot of people don't really pay attention to is that if this link summon card is destroyed by battle or destroyed by an opponent's card effect, while it's in your owner's monster zone, you can add 1 dark monster with 15 or less from deck to hand. Really easy to get into your Predaplants that way, if you happen to need anything. Next up, I actually cut down to a single copy of Melodies. I realized I'm not running very many of them. Sorry, not that I'm not running very many of them, that I only use 1 per game. Typically, I mean, I have no reason to go into another one. That's just how it is. People very rarely utilize both of the effects of this one as well. This one right here lets you not only add a Predaplant card from deck to hand, but it also allows you to tribute off a monster that you control or a monster with a Predacounter to special out a Predaplant monster. So if for whatever reason you can't go into Darlingtonia Cobra because maybe you just don't have a means of specialing out, or you don't have a means of getting that secondary card, if you can fuse off into this right here, you can always just tribute, special out your Darlingtonia Cobra. You've got your fusion in hand at that point. Next up, Chimera Fleecia. Another one that people don't really use the effects that very much. They don't use the effects very much, and the first one is that you can just banish, straight up banish a monster that has equal to or less than stars than this card. Level is important these days, everyone knows. Banishing a monster is a pretty big deal, so there's that, plus the secondary effect of when it's in battle, you can make your opponent's monster lose 1,000, this card will gain 1,000. So even at 35, that's pretty hard to get over, especially when you drain your opponent's tag 2. Of course, you saw this one coming, Predaplants, and I'm not gonna go super in detail about this, or actually in detail at all, because you should know what it does by now. Next up, Triflevertum. This one right here is one of my favorites because you can just stop your opponent from specialing from the extra deck, and it just has a huge power boost based on the Predacounters that are on the field. Just gains the original attack of each monster that has a Predacounter on it, which I think is fantastic. Of all other monsters on the field with Predacounters, so sometimes you can just place Predacounters on your own cards, boost it up. That's what I did back in the day when I had that Dragoon in here. Next up, Starving Venom, Predapower, Fusion Dragon, which is always live as long as you have a Predacounter on field. Now this one right here, I'm trying to remember if it has like any secondary effect, but no. So basically you'll just tribute off a monster that has a Predacounter, and it's an Omni-Negate. So the capacity to put Predacounters on the field is already really high, and you can leverage them like nothing else I've ever played. Next up, we got Starving Venom, Fusion Dragon. This one right here came in clutch in the last tournament. I was playing some Magnets, and I got cornered with a battle bot, but I was able to blank out everyone's effect using Predaplants and special out Venom Fusion Dragon, steal the battle bot's effect, and its attack. Went pretty crazy, if you ask me. DPE, I gotta get used to this card, I'm not even gonna lie. It's much easier to use Dragoon than DPE just because you have to be intentional in the effect. I don't always super remember to do everything, but that's how it is. Next up, we have Queritus, Queeritis, you already know what it is. And we got a single copy of Albion. Really great target for Mirror Jade, and that's all I have to say about that. I can just be fusion summoning. And I did run into an instance where Masquerade became just like absolutely necessary. Of course, you know, just burn your opponent for 600 for everything, for every single thing that they do ever. Next up, double Lubellion. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I was looking for that Lubellion in that Darkwing Blast. I didn't get it, it's fine. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And then lastly, double Mirror Jade. Real easy capacity, just banish your opponent's monsters, all for the cost of one Albion. Can't use it the next turn, but you already know what it is. So onto the side deck. So I did play against a guy who was doing Runic Sprite, and this card right here really came in clutch. He got clapped up. I felt bad for him because I clapped him game 1. Went into game 2, I went ahead and sided out. Because I wasn't worried about him per se, but I didn't know what he was gonna go into, but I knew, of course, that like Runic has been one of the toughest matchups like I've faced recently. This guy almost got me to deck out with it, so I didn't want to play any games. I just went ahead and sided out. Anti-spell fragrance. You already know, the opponent just can't like fucking play any spells unless they set them. They neither person can, but you know, I got like 17 different super polys. I'm either gonna use them or I'm not. Next up, triple copy, Dark Ruler. Don't have to explain what that is. If you don't know what it is, I'm sorry. Triple copy, DD Crow. Triple copy of Dogwood. Now this one right here is really great for tiers, of course. We got to play one of our locals, and you know, one of our premier tier players was like, yeah, man, you want to make sure you always aim for this card right here. And you know, that's the best part about going to locals, is that people are really supportive and willing to help you, as long as they, you know, if they're good themselves, they'll typically be there to offer some support or guidance. And then finally, triple Ash Blossom. You guys already know what that does. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Initially, I was gonna do some test hands, but I think I might just save that for a different video, considering I'm already at 20-something minutes. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. If you like the video, go ahead and like the video, because realistically, I mean, what else are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Dislike the video? I'll do that. I'll find you. But yeah, appreciate it. Like, share, comment, subscribe, etc., etc. Follow us on Instagram at Broski Gamers. You already know what it is. Follow me on Instagram at devil_Don. Follow Yugioh on Instagram at Yugioh._D. Feels, I don't know. Anyway, catch you guys later. Peace.